yeah, I got the juice. Whip game cool, make them look like cool. Always play it cool, that's the biggest rule. Forget what they doing, keep on doing.
Hey guys, it's Epic here and welcome back to a new video. Today I'm super excited because I'm finally going to be showing off to you guys my Boom Puppy Moze build for Mayhem 4. This build has been extremely draining to say the least. I can't even begin to explain. I think I've been testing this build more than I've tested any build before. And the amount of support and the amount of help I received making this build from the community, like there's so many people that helped me out, I can't even list them, honestly. Like the amount of support has been insane. Because I had been seeing a lot of Moze builds where they focused on one thing. I know Moxie made a build where he focused on the Iron Bear doing most of the work. Some people like Jolts focused on your splash damage and your explosives doing most of the work. But when I made this build, I had a clear goal. Since this is my first time doing a proper Mayhem 4 Moze build, I wanted to make my goal really hard but really awesome. I wanted this build to be able to do it all. So I wanted Iron Bear to be able to mob really well. I wanted Moze to be able to mob really well. I wanted Iron Bear to be able to boss well. I wanted Moze to be able to boss well. I just wanted you to be able to do just everything in the game with this. Of course, Moze is in a really bad spot right now, as is Flak, as is Borderlands 3 as a whole. But I tried my best to make this build as viable as possible. I will say that this build isn't for casual players. This is a hybrid build, meaning it lacks a little in every single area, whereas other builds might excel. So it's definitely not an all-round OP god build, but it's more of a skill-based build, and if you play it well, then it does do extremely well. But just know that if you was to pick a build that focused more into one line like splash damage or the Iron Bear, it would probably perform a lot better than this build. But I thought for fun and just to see how well it could perform, I wanted to make it do everything, and I think it does a pretty good job at doing so. So the build is on screen, and for once I'm actually going to go quite in depth in this video in just a second after I show you guys the build. If you didn't already pick up on it, the build focuses heavily down the Iron Bear damage route. It also focuses on Moze's damage and splash damage as a whole. We also have Vampire for lifesteal on your grenades. I also wanted to make sure we get as much damage out of Moze as possible, so I did go into Drowning in Brass. I know some people aren't a fan of it, but I personally am for this build. Now, I did make the decision to get rid of explosive punctuation and get armored infantry instead. I needed to not only progress the orange tree, but also access other skills like Drowning in Brass. This was a really tough decision, and I wish I still had punctuation, but unfortunately I don't. I've tried every way I can to get it back, but without losing other skills, but it's just not possible. So it's just something that I'm going to have to say my goodbyes with. Maybe you could get a comm that actually gives you points into it, but I highly doubt it. Now, speaking of the comm, let's get right into the gear for the build. First of all, I have a kib's worth, and you want to take note on the damage here. I have ×2. If you have ×3, you won't properly get infinite ammo on it, so make sure you get ×2. Also, try to get as much damage as you can on it as possible. I also have an Iron Bear splash damage anointment, very handy. You want to get these on pretty much every piece of gear if you can. And I also make sure that my primary kib's worth can swap between shock and incendiary damage. This makes dropping anointed enemies pretty easy, and also makes dropping shielded enemies pretty easy. In fact, you can even take down Wotan's shield with this. No need for a Cutsman here. Next up, I have a Brainstormer. This is a simple one. It's in here because it's a Brainstormer and they are awesome. Really handy for Maliwan takedown. Really handy for just dropping all of the shields on the enemies, then swapping back to your kibs and then just annihilating their health bar. Again, for dropping anointed enemies, I have a double penetrating Alchemist. You could sub this with something like a Juliet's Dazzle or maybe an Ogre or a Redline if you want, but I prefer the Alchemist because it just has crazy high damage. And again, you want as much splash damage on this as you can get. Next up, I have a Quickie. My one's only a blue variant, and again, you want ×2 for maximum damage, but if you don't know what this rocket launcher does, it basically means that when you hop out of your Iron Bear and switch to Sticky, you can fire basically infinite ammo. So yeah, you get that infinite ammo for 5 seconds, and if you load it up onto an enemy, it's going to kill it, like instantly. This is how you're going to melt bosses like Grave Ward or even Wotan or like the Valkyries really quick. Unfortunately, there's no drop source for it, so you'll just have to go hunting. I would recommend you could get maybe a purple one from the golden chest in Sanctuary. I've also had them drop from chests in the vaults as well after killing Grave Ward, so that's really handy too. Or alternatively, you can come to my Discord, the Vault Hunter's Paradise, and try and trade for one. Into my shield, I have a stopgap. Again, on my action skill end, I have a bonus element, but if you can, go for one that gives you more shield and health on Iron Bear exit. That's going to make your survivability a lot higher. And as you already know, the stopgap will make you immune on any damage after you break your shield for 5 seconds. And you also get a chance to absorb bullets as ammo. But the biggest and most helpful feature of this shield is that 20% damage reduction. That's going to make us a lot more harder to hit. Next, I have a cloning maddening tracker. If you don't have one of these, because again, they don't have a drop source, I would recommend something like my Hex that I have here. And you want to look for the anointment that gives you on grenade thrown, weapon grenade, and action skill damage are increased by 25% for 5 seconds. And additionally, if you can, try and get a duplicate grenade that has an elemental anoint on action skill end. I'll explain more about that a little later on, but let's move on to the class mod, which is the Blast Masterclass mod. I did experiment with the Bloodletter class mod with a Deathless artifact, but honestly I found myself being a lot more squishy and dying way more often. And also we do need that additional damage, and this class mod gives it to us on demand, which is very handy. The longer we're shooting without reloading, the more splash damage we're going to deal, which is absolutely insane and ties into this build perfectly. Also, if you can, make sure you have 1 point into redistribution on your class mod. This is going to make you get a lot more regeneration on your ammo. And you also want your additional stats to be into splash, weapon, and grenade damage like I have here. Obviously, what I'm using is pretty much a god roll, and I know that you're probably not going to get your hands on one. You could try trading up for one like I did, but if you can't get your hands on one, just get what works for you. For my artifact, I use the Last Stand Auto Idol. This gives us temporary invulnerability when our health drops below 50%, which is very handy, and we also restore 18% of our max health after killing an enemy. I don't really know what's a better artifact to run for this build. I've experimented with pretty much all of the ones that I would think would be useful. This one seems to be the best. I thought of having a victory rush, but I just didn't think it would be all that handy. But you guys know me, I'm always learning, so if you have any suggestions or anything you want to teach me about this, then feel free to do so. Into my backup here, I have another Kibsworth. This one has corrosive damage. This is what I'll be using to take down the Valkyries for the most part. I then have a Shock and a Corrosive Cutsman. These are for Wotan. You don't need them, but I would say that the Corrosive Cutsman is definitely necessary. I have a Scourge in the fire and corrosive element. I would have all of the elements on me, but I just don't like having a bunch of loot on me. But if you have them, then put them on, especially if you can with that action skill end splash damage. I have a shock and corrosive protuberance. I don't use them often, but sometimes they're fun to play around with, and you know, that's what this is about, is having fun. And then for the same reason as I did the Scourges, I have an ion cannon in the normal and corrosive element. Again, you can have every element on you if you wish. And I have a piss grenade on me with the on grenade thrown weapon grenade action skill damage increased anointment, only to let you guys know something. If you ran this grenade and you were chucking it at enemies, you would be dealing bucket loads more damage than you ever would be without it. I cannot recommend enough doing that with this build. However, there is a big catch, and this is why I don't use it in the build. When you chuck this grenade, your hopes of getting any lifesteal and keeping yourself alive go straight out the window. If you're using a grenade like this, the cloning maddening tracker, or even the hex, it is going to be extremely hard to die. So if you want to risk it and you know you can stay alive long enough, then you can use the piss grenade. You will deal an absolute ton more damage, but I don't think it's safe to do so. Now, I have been testing this build for over a week now, and I can honestly tell you guys that without the recursion, this build is going to drop down a lot when they release the balancing patch for the Maliwan takedown. If you guys don't know, the event will go away on the 30th of January. It's the 28th when I'm recording this video, meaning it's going to get insanely hard again. Until they make the scaling permanent, I can tell you for a fact that this build, my Feastmaster Flak build, and so many other builds will be completely redundant. So until Gearbox get their heads out of their asses and completely fix it, and fix Moze and fix Flak, I'm sorry, but the recursion has to be in this build. I have tried so hard to not put this gun in the build. Like, I just can't put it into words. There has been so much stuff going on behind the scenes, and I've tried my hardest. But I can honestly tell you guys, when you get to Wotan, and this is only for Wotan, you don't need to use this anywhere else, this is only for Wotan. When you get to Wotan, if you are not using the recursion, your fight is going to be a lot longer. Like, a lot longer. You're going to be there for a lot of time. You could also use this in the Valkyrie boss fight and shorten that boss fight, but you actually don't need to. But in the event that you do want to use the recursion, you don't have to. I know some people are against it, and that's completely fair, but if you do want to use it, make sure you get extra elemental annoyance and also have it on your shield and grenade as well. I am so sorry. I wish I could do something about this and not have this in the build, but it's just not possible right now. I have tried everything. If I want to make this build and market it as OP, then the recursion just has to be in here, and that's the way it is. That's the way it's going to be until they fix Moze, until they fix Flak, until they fix the game. Again, just to clear something up as well, I use the Vanquisher rocket pods with no anointments. I do not anoint my rockets, and for the simple reason being they are more powerful without them. You might be tempted to put anointments on them, but believe me, you don't want to. They deal more damage as they are, and that is the way they're gonna stay. Like, they're made to be unanointed. So how should you be playing this build? Well, you kind of want to play it similar to the Feastmaster Flak build, or any Flak build for that matter, in the sense that you want to be careful. This isn't Zane, this isn't Amara, and until Gearbox buff Moze and Flak, both of them characters have to be extra cautious. Now, are you as fragile as a glass house? No, you're not, but trust me, it's very, very easy to get overwhelmed if you're not paying attention. Again, this build takes a bit of getting used to and a bit of skill to use properly, and if you get good with it, then of course you can just run around like I do. Also, on the 30th, when the scaling patch gets taken away until they add it permanently, do note that this build is going to be severely handicapped by the Maliwan takedown. Again, I'm so sorry, there's nothing I can do about this simply because Moze and Flak are in a terrible spot right now, and like I said, until Gearbox decide that they want to fix them, there's nothing I can do. But believe me, I've done so much testing, and I can honestly tell you this is as good as this build gets. You can also feel free to play around with other guns like the Ogre, very good gun if you want to use it in this build, or even like I said, the Juliet's Dazzle or the Ion Laser, all very good weapons that you could use. I didn't include them because personally I didn't think they were all that handy, but that's just down to my playstyle. But with that being said, you guys, that is going to do it for this video. I put so much work into this build, I can't even tell you guys. I really hope you enjoy it because I have been working day and night to get this build out for you guys. If you have any issues with the build, please leave a comment. I will try my best to help you out, and if you have any suggestions or tips to make it better, let me know as well. This build is by far the hardest build I have ever had to make, and I genuinely never want to try and do it again until they buff her. but I do hope you guys enjoy it nonetheless. I gave it my all, so let me know what you think of it in the comment section down below. But as always guys, thank you so much for your support. I appreciate it more than you will ever know. Thank you for watching the video and have a nice day.